Hello, everybody. It is a mere 9 days to go until we will finally know the outcome of election 2017. I've got my specs on. That's because I simply cannot trust the evidence of my eyes when I look at the opinion polls and the changes that are going on. I'm staggered where this election's heading. It seems to be getting closer and closer. Each opinion poll that you look at has got a situation where the Labour, I wouldn't say the deficit, but the difference between the two parties is getting smaller and smaller each time, and it's just looking very, very close, which is totally bizarre given what we were all expecting at the start of the campaign and for the last couple of years. But I think Corbyn has just managed to hit on something, a level of discontentment and disgruntlement and unhappiness that the political elite just haven't picked up on, that is actually there at the moment. I think that's all I can kind of put it down to, really. But I think also Theresa's having an absolute shocker. I think many of us who were not natural May supporters thought she wasn't the sort of amazing person that the Tories were painting her out to be. But she really has been thoroughly, thoroughly awful. You know, we had the U-turn on the social care. We've had just a sort of fundamental lack of certainty, a real sense that she's sort of fishing around, trying to find a purpose and a direction, and just struggling to do it. The debate last night, I know I haven't done one of these since then. I thought it was too late and you'd all be tucked up in bed. So I didn't do a bones ballot last night. But my assessment of it, I think in many ways they both did well, Corbyn and May. It's not easy when you've got the audience that can basically chuck any question at you, and you've got to deal with a real person and a real scenario and real issues, and you can't just sort of palm it off with platitudes. So I thought they did fairly well. I thought Corbyn was much, much better than May at the kind of audience stuff. But then he does this. This is his sort of staple diet in his political career. He's made a career out of rallies like this and meeting people and talking to people. So it's just very natural for him, and to have people disagreeing with him. Again, he was in that same studio at Sky, I think, when Owen Smith challenged him for the leadership. So I thought he just felt very natural, very conversational. Again, you can agree or disagree with the substance of it, but actually, in terms of engaging and coming across as personable and decent and believing in what he said, I thought he came across really, really well. Theresa May, I thought, did okay. She did better than I was expecting, but she's so terribly wooden. Terribly, terribly wooden. There's not a lot of warmth and engagement. And sort of positive energy. I mean, the message I take out when I look at the Tory manifesto and the campaign is it's so bleak, it's so negative. It's saying, we've had a really tough 7 years and we've got more pain to come and the negotiations are going to be difficult. We've punished the young, now we've got to punish the old with the dementia tax. It's really negative. Now, I'm sure some of my right-wing friends will say, yes, but that's just being honest and realistic. But I can't remember who it was, but it was said once that you win an election when you get the party that gives the more positive vision tends to be the part of the future, tends to be the party that comes out on top. And just painting a relentlessly negative, difficult message is really not very good for people. In terms of the Paxman interviews, I thought Paxman. I agree with all the sort of commentators saying he really did appear like he needed to be put out to pasture and pensioned off. I don't know what he was trying to do at all. I mean, he was interrupting everybody all of the time. He was shouty. He was quite rude, actually, and it just, I thought they both handled him well in terms of just sort of saying, well, Jeremy, if you're going to let me answer, that's brilliant, and if you're not, then I'll just be quiet until you do. In terms of the substance, he had a strange tactic. He attacked Corbyn from the left. He was sort of saying, in your manifesto, there's loads of things that you've not got in there that you believe, and he was trying to imply that, or said that Corbyn wants to get rid of the monarchy and all this. And I thought Corbyn's response on that was brilliant, just saying, Jeremy, it's not in there because we're not going to do it. I thought that was really kind of powerful and strong and sensible. And similarly with Theresa May, Paxman was there sort of, you've changed your mind on everything, you will remain, then you will leave, blah, blah, blah. I think if we start the political debate from the position that everybody standing for office is a liar and a charlatan and out to trick people, then it's no wonder that people don't have a lot of faith in the political process. And I think interviewers sometimes, yes, you're not there to sort of, gives someone an easy ride, but you're also not just there to make them look a fool either. These are actually people who are putting themselves in the public domain for difficult and responsible public positions. And yes, they need scrutiny, but they do need a little bit of respect as well, and not just derision in the way that Paxman was doing. But anyway, I didn't think there were any sort of major clangers from either side. I mean, Corbyn predictably was challenged on his attitudes to security and his links or however strong they are in terms of the IRA and the Falklands. Bizarrely, that was sort of wheeled out. And Theresa May was basically challenged on her sort of inability to believe anything, and the fiasco of the campaign. So, I thought they both came out of it okay. I think Corbyn did better because he did better in the audience section. And it will be interesting to see. I think Friday there is a question time chaired by David Dimbleby with an audience. I think it'll be the same format of each of them individually, in a mixture of audience and then the individual interview. So I think that's probably the one that more people will watch because it's BBC and everything else. That will be quite important, I think. In terms of today, I've only sort of half followed it. I've been off filming and doing other stuff, but Corbyn got himself in a bit of a tangle on the radio on Woman's Hour. Is it Woman's Hour or Women's Hour? Whichever. Anyway, that hour he got himself in a real tangle because he didn't know the figures about how much it would cost to bring about the free childcare places that he's pledged to do, and he was scrambling around trying to look on his iPad and all of that. I have to say, I didn't think. I was very. It wasn't a great look. I mean, let's be fair. You're announcing a policy and you don't have the figures. It's not a great look. I thought the way he dealt with it this evening, and actually the way he dealt with it at the time, I was saying, well, I'm just sort of, I'll just having a look or whatever. But I think today to just say, well, I didn't know the figure and I'm sorry, but I don't, apologise for having the policy. I think we expect politicians sometimes to be supermen, and actually, is it really that big a deal if a politician doesn't know off the top of their head the exact number of billions that it costs to implement policy X or policy Y? I mean, is it any different to asking a cricket commentator the exact batting average of Brian Lara or Sachin Tendulkar? And they don't quite know it, but they do know enough to know that this Lara's better or whatever. I just think at times we expect politicians to be supermen, and actually, is it the worst thing to have to look up the number and say, well, I don't actually know, I'm just going to have a look here? I think we get into the thing of calling it a gaffe and a mistake and all of this quite quickly. At least he didn't do a Diane Abbott, and I think probably the reason he wouldn't give an answer to the numbers, he was desperate to avoid doing a Diane Abbott of just sort of making it up and sprouting any old nonsense. So I don't think that's done him any particular harm. But it's the polls that are really interesting. They vary at Tory leads of between 5 points and 12 points. Now, again, that's still quite a lot. That's still quite high. I think they were saying if it was absolutely uniform across all the constituencies, then the Tory majority, assuming if it was the 5-point majority that they got, the majority in terms of seats in the House of Commons would actually go down from their current 17 to 2. So that would be a total disaster for Theresa May, having gambled on this election that she didn't really need to have because she thought she'd win it and win it comfortably. A majority of 2 would be an absolute humiliation. But then at the other extreme, you with ICM and some of the other companies, you've got a lead of 12. The key thing is the trend, because even there, at the start of the campaign, we were talking about Tory leads of 24-25%. That has gone down even on the ICM reading to 12. Why that is, I was doing a bit of research about this. The companies like ICM that have still got relatively high, or albeit reduced from earlier in the campaign, Tory leads, the reason they've done that is because they are making assumptions about turnout in terms of the different age groups, and they're basically assuming that the past is a guide to the future, and older people are more likely to vote than younger people, as has happened previously, and therefore when a 19-year-old says I'm definitely voting Labour, they've somehow weighted it that's taken with a bit of a pinch of salt, whereas when a 99-year-old, or perhaps 99 is not a great example, maybe 79-year-old says they're definitely voting Tory, that's taken as a sort of, yes, they'll be there, absolutely. I'm not sure it's quite going to play out like that this time, and the reason I say that is because of the high number of people that registered in the last, in the couple of weeks, before the deadline. I think on the last day of registration, something like 250,000 people registered. Compared with in the 2015 election, it was 120,000. So that's not to say that all of those 250,000 are young. It's not to say all of the 250,000 are going to vote Labour or even going to vote at all. But it strikes me that if someone can be bothered to go through the process of registering, it would seem quite odd that they wouldn't then go through the process of voting, particularly when there's all the media attention around it. Now, maybe they'll have other things to do, or, there'll be it'll rain or whatever. But I think the turnout issue amongst the generations could be the determining factor here. There was some other information that said between 18 and 24, in that age bracket, it's something like 73% of people in that age bracket say that they would vote Labour, 20% would vote Tory, and 7% everybody else. And then if you go for the over 65s, the numbers are basically completely juxtaposed opposites, where it's a massively high percentage. 60 to 70% of people will vote Tory, and most of the rest will vote Labour. And obviously, if you get the turnout that you have historically, which is more older and fewer younger, then that will play in Theresa May's favour. But if Corbyn really has hit on something in terms of youth engagement and people feeling energised and involved, then it's going to be really close. Then I think we really are talking in terms of May's majority being basically what it is now, or possibly slashed, or possibly, if there's some other gaffe in the campaign, you could then talk in terms of Labour doing deals or coalitions, or even, I think, getting a majority. I think we're in that uncertain sort of territory at the moment, and I think she's underestimated how much resentment and anger I don't think it's apathy. I think people say there's apathy. I don't think there is. I think people are really, really annoyed. I think they look at the country and they see millions of people going to food banks. They can't get appointments with their doctors to see a GP. Teachers leaving the teaching profession in their droves. Tax credits being cut. And I think people are looking at it and they're fed up, absolutely fed up. And they see a government that just isn't dealing with it. So I think whatever the outcome, and let's face it, the odds are still that Theresa May is going to emerge somehow as the winner of this, probably with a bigger majority. But I think even if that happens, I think her brand, certainly the image of her as a decisive, confident leader with a clear position on issues facing the country, I think that image has basically gone. And it's probably gone because actually she was never really that person in the first place. One of the commentators was saying, with every prime minister that's successful, and we saw it with Thatcher, we saw it with Blair, to a lesser extent with Cameron, they kind of walk on water for a while, and they appear politically invincible. They're never politically invincible because politics isn't like that. But they manage to sort of muddle through, and then you get an event like the poll tax or the Iraq War, or the EU referendum that totally consumes them, and they simply lose the authority, and the status just drains away from them. I think what's happened in this campaign is it's drained away from her during the campaign, and that's something I don't think any of us have ever really seen happen, where literally the scene, yet the thing yesterday that really was the take home thing for me in the debate was the audience openly mocking the Prime Minister. And I just thought that this is not a good look. This is a woman who's set her stall out to be strong and stable, confident, competent, and yet she's being openly mocked by a TV audience. That really isn't a great look. But she didn't have to call the election. She chose to, and politics is a great leveller sometimes. Quick mention of the Lib Dems. I know I always say this. There is nothing to say about them. I say this day after day. There literally is nothing to say because they've said nothing. Absolutely nothing at all, other than let's rerun the referendum that's already happened. I think they're having a shocking campaign. Absolutely shocking. And I could see them actually losing seats next week, even though they're only on 8. I think they're having an absolute shocker. Similarly with UKIP. The Tories are sweeping up the UKIP votes. Labour are sweeping up the Lib Dem votes. It's all to play for. 9 days to go. I can't wait. See you later.